Hello to all our amazing, better, braver, happier painters out there. This is a quick content warning before we get into the episode. This episode does have a conversation about injuries sustained while hobbying and a couple of injuries not while hobbying. So if that's something that you're squeamish about, you might want to wait till part 2 of the interview with Aaron Lovejoy comes out. So without further ado, let's get to the episode. Welcome to listening to Paint Try with Mike and Dan, a podcast about the art and hobby of miniature painting. I'm Mike.
And I'm Dan. Thank you for joining us as we continue our quest to be better, braver, happier painters.
Today we are so excited to have a special guest who epitomizes the joy of painting. He's an incredible teacher and a talented artist, and somebody I should have had on the show a long time ago. We've been talking about it for a couple of years, but it is our absolute pleasure to welcome Aaron Lovejoy of Miniature Monthly. Aaron, thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I think it was just fun talking about it for so long.
The threat of Aaron being on the show.
We're going to do it tomorrow. Okay, no, we're not.
Well, originally we had talked about it in was it 2021? Was it 2022? No, 21 ReaperCon. Right. And we were going to do it on Sunday. And then you woke up, you had no voice whatsoever on Sunday morning.
That was the first year out of COVID, right? So,
yeah.
Or I mean, not really out of COVID. We're never going to be out of COVID, but it was the first convention back, and
right.
Yeah, I didn't realize how brutal it would be trying to teach in a mask. Like that was not fun at all.
Right, because I took your airbrushing class that Sunday morning, and you were just like, "Oh, this sucks so bad."
Yeah. I'm like, I've got the shots. Is it okay if I just take this mask off, please, God?
Yeah, no, that was definitely interesting doing the whole masking thing in the context of a convention. It was also escalated the heat in Texas, substantially.
For sure. And one thing I learned was because everyone was doing the cool kid masks, they had logos on them. And, I got one of Michael Proctor's, the crow's nest, and a couple other people gave me masks. But the problem with those are none of them are stiff enough to actually not get sucked into your mouth while you're talking. Oh. So everyone had these cool masks on, and they were literally eating them the entire convention. So, you get halfway through the day and your mask would be just drenched with spit. Ugh. It was so gross. It was so gross.
So, yikes! Mask munching and brush licking, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Evils of the hobby.
Not a good combo.
So, Aaron, you're definitely a very well-known painter on the scene. But would you mind giving our listeners, like maybe the two of them that don't know who you are, just a little bit of your hobby origin story?
Well, I was born, and then here we are.
Perfect. All right, let's move on.
Growing up, my dad was he was really into making models and stuff, and I mean, not like we did it every weekend, but we made B-52 bombers and Sherman battle tanks and King Tigers, all that good stuff. We also blew them up with firecrackers, so which is even more interesting because the fireworks are illegal in California, but we still did it, and that was really fun for me. And I really enjoyed making models, and I really sucked at painting. He always made way better paint jobs than me. And then as I got older, you discover girls and skateboards, and that all goes by the wayside. And it wasn't until I was almost 30 when I discovered Warhammer 40K in a board game store in San Diego. And I didn't even know they made stores like that. I thought, if you wanted to go get a board game, which are super lame, you went to Walmart or whatever. But right. Apparently they actually have game stores. Now I know there's some really cool game stores out there, but I had no clue. And I walked in there and I'm looking around. I'm like, this is super lame. And I remember distinctly walking around a corner and there was a Warhammer Fantasy Army on a table, just sprawled out. Nobody was there. No, there's no one to talk to. It was just like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. and stopped me in my tracks. I turn around, I start talking to the person at the front desk. I'm like, what the heck is that? Like, oh, it's this game. It's a game, but you get to paint it too. So it's kind of like a hobby. And I was like, that is super cool. So in true Lovejoy fashion, I forgot about all that stuff and I went back to life. And it wasn't until a few months later. I don't know if you guys remember like Wizards of the Coast stores. I don't know if they were on the East Coast, but they were definitely on the West Coast. And so we were going to a movie, and there was a Wizards of the Coast store right in the little alleyway when you went up to the movie theater. So I went in there because they had video games, and I was a crackhead for video games, but you had to walk through the whole store. They were smart. You had to walk through the whole store to get back to the video game area. And that's when I saw Warhammer 40K. So I'd seen fantasy the first time. Second time I saw Warhammer 40K, and that friggin' did it for me. And quite honestly, to this day, I still just have a huge love affair for Space Marines. They just, it's like some people are into Knights of Armor, some people are into whatever. I mean, like Space Marines just do it for me. So, so that was when I got started. Basically, right there, I went and bought a starter set, the 3rd edition. It was Black Templars and Dark Eldar. And then and here we are today, 20 some odd years later.
Wow. And you've gone through such a huge evolution with it too, though. You've gone from the enthusiast to teacher to now you're an entrepreneur in the world of miniature painting on multiple levels. And so maybe, how did Miniature Monthly get started? I'm always curious about that because it's it's iconic in the hobby community.
Well, as I stated, and we were lucky enough to do a book a couple years ago with Dave Taylor, and kind of like he wanted me to do like a prelude or something to the book, and I'm like, Miniature Monthly was born of desperation, pure and simple. I was at the point. Well, contrary to popular belief, artists don't get a lot of money. It's not the most lucrative of positions. Or professions. And I mean, granted, some people really make it, but usually on average, you barely make it, and I found myself, maxed out credit cards. My son, we didn't have insurance because I couldn't afford it. And so it got to the point where he had 2 ingrown hairs on his toes on both sides, and it was just killing him. And so, we finally got on like sort of a California's welfare or whatever, which was a joke. It literally took almost a year to get him in to see the doctor to have his toes fixed. So all the while he's in massive pain, through this whole time. And so we finally did that, and I was like, that was when reality really hit it, because up until then it was like we were making it but not making it type of thing. And I was like, wow, we are one broken ankle or arm away from just total crash and burn. And I was like, well, the run is over. Either I got to do something to actually start bringing enough money to get things like healthcare, or I need to just go find a job. Like, it was fun while it lasted, moving on. And so Ben Comets had started his Patreon, and he was the first one that really was doing it successfully, and I was like, you know what, that's like, if this is the last chance, the last hurrah, like, let's just go for it. And that's kind of how Miniature Monthly was born. It was, based on 2 ingrown toenails. So that was, he did get a surgery, and it was really gross. When you see blood pouring out of your son's toes, like someone turned the faucet on, it's like, oh,
jeez.
But it worked out, and I started Miniature Monthly, and it worked out. So, but one thing that's taught me over the years is you just have to be, as an artist, you have to be diversified. You can't be like, I'm just going to be the guy who paints orcs and that's it. You really do. It is a job. Like, if you're going to make it your profession, it is a job, and you have to treat it that way, which is not very fun sometimes, Sometimes I hate my job, but most of the time I love it. So, it works out. But so that's kind of how that started, but that's also how everything else has started. We're working on, so, during COVID, you couldn't go anywhere. So I just was like, well, I'm going to learn how to sculpt digitally. And I did my Hogwarts diorama, and then after that, it was like, well, I can make bases. So, anyways, we're launching a line of bases next month, and that's just one of the many things that you just kind of got to try different avenues. They don't all work out, Don't feel bad if nobody likes my bases. I move on to something else. It is what it is. But
Well,
that's the
obviously your
life of an
sculpting has
artist.
made an impact because you won Best in Show with that piece, right?
Yeah,
That was gorgeous at
that was
ReaperCon.
really cool. For something that it took me like 2 years to finish that piece, so it was definitely one of those things that I was very happy and fortunate that it did make Best in Show. That was super cool. But at the same time, it was something I really wanted to learn how to digitally sculpt, and that project was way more detailed than I ever would have than I could have ever imagined. Like it allowed me to do things that were in my head that I could have never done in real life. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity. And even if it had not placed at all, like it was still, I learned how to sculpt in 3D, or digitally. And I also learned how to 3D print, and, as much as that drives me crazy too, it's a good thing to know. So I don't know. And that's the other thing about this hobby is just everything always evolves and there's always something new. So just when I think, oh, I've done it all, you haven't done anything.
So bases, that's exciting. Is this a Kickstarter that y'all are running, or is it just going to be available through the web store?
We're not really doing a Kickstarter because, maybe eventually someday, but Kickstarters are their own demon in themselves. Yes. And we have so many things going. I know I wouldn't be able to handle the onslaught of questions and weird stuff that goes on there. So we're doing a pre-order at the start of next month. We have one baseline, but the difference is it's in all the major base styles. So beveled bases, roundlet bases, and then I guess infinity bases are also beveled, but they're a little bit different. They're different. They're a little shorter, all that stuff. But I have some good ideas for those things, and so we're just gonna do a pre-order and see what happens. I think we can manage that better now than doing a Kickstarter or something. So not saying it won't happen, but maybe one day, I don't know.
I feel like Kickstarters, you almost have to hire a company to run the Kickstarter for you because of how chaotic it is.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, it's just, we kind of have, like I said, we're so diversified with different things. I have like 4 full-time jobs right now. Like, I don't know where I get the time in the day to do them all, but I just don't know if I could handle one more thing that actually saps all of your resources, so I'm not too worried about it. Maybe one day we can do that, but not today.
We'll definitely make sure we put in the show notes how to get to those bases. And you said they're going to launch in like a month or so, right?
Yeah, should be like May 1st. We're going to do a pre-order, which I don't even know how we do that, but we'll figure it out.
I know someone that can help you out with that. We'll talk later.
Yeah, there we go. It's one of those things where like you can't be good at everything, so it really does help when when I have help. It's just
yeah, Dan is good at that logistical management stuff. Me not so much.
It's one of those things. Like, I mean, just like we launched so we have busts on miniaturemonthly.com. We have a couple of Benjamin Cantor's busts that he's done over the years, and like just doing the shipping on it, we're like, what do we do?
I get it.
What it is. And we kind of did a hokey version of the shipping because they don't give you all the options you need. Like if someone ordered all 3 busts, obviously it's not going to be, $6 a bust to ship. It's going to cut down because you put them all together. The website doesn't really let you do that. So, it's like, okay, how do we get around that? So it is what it is, but sometimes you just got to go for it.
Dan, you are awfully quiet, man.
Oh, you guys are doing all this stuff, man. I know people don't think I'm there with all the interviews, but I'm in all the interviews. I just don't have anything to say because I'm just listening to like all the rest of the people.
Dan and I are telepathically communicating right now. We're having a conversation about something else, but
yeah. So Uh, my first time running into you physically was at Adepticon. Uh, I would really like to get your thoughts on that. You've probably been there a few times as a instructor and probably just as a participant and a viewer, I guess. What are your thoughts? What were your experiences at Adepticon this year?
So I would say that this year, and Liz and I talked about this on the plane flight home. This was my favorite year ever of Adepticon, and I'm not sure why. We always have a good time, Like it's Adepticon. It's one of my favorite con. Like if I had two to pick from each year, it'd be Adepticon and ReaperCon all day long. For different reasons, but this year at Adepticon, and I think some of it's your own mental state. The con is what you make it. Like,
Right.
I have friends who are like, it was horrible. I can't believe it. It's like, well, what'd you do? I didn't do anything. It's like, okay, well, did you talk to anybody? No, I avoided everyone. And then, nobody talked to me, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, but you're avoiding it. Like it is what it is. But granted, if you were robbed or something, yeah, you had a horrible con, but I just found, I think the other thing this year is Liz and I realized, like, well, I'm already old, but she's an old soul. So we slept. Like we went to bed like early, like old people. Like and what was funny
Nice.
is we got up, we did we always have classes in the morning. I schedule my con this way. I want my classes bright and early in the morning. It sucks because you got to wake up and you're at a con, you're on your vacation or whatever. You got to wake up early. But once those 1 or 2 or 3 classes is over with, I got the rest of the day. I don't have any responsibilities. I feel good. I can move on. But what we realized the first night we were going to go back over to Adepticon. We ate dinner with some friends, and we were going to go back to the Schomburg and just hang out. And usually that means you get home at what? 3 in the morning or something,
Right.
to go back to your room. Instead, it was like 9 o'clock. We're like, we're kind of tired. We're just going to go back to the room and go to bed. So we did. And what we found was you got up in the morning, you're still tired, but you're more refreshed than if you went to bed at 3. And we went and did our classes. And then I was like wide awake. And we actually experienced the con much better. We had a lot more interactions with people because you're not just tired and grumpy,
Mhm.
You just find a couch somewhere upstairs and nap, for half the con. And we did that every night except the last night when we were on Saturday was our last day of teaching. And so we kind of celebrated with some friends and, yeah, I couldn't feel my face. Like it was pretty gnarly. It was a good time. And we ended up staying up really late. So we were drunk and stayed up really late. And the next day I felt like crap. Like I was like, this is how I normally feel at a con. And I'm like, oh, that's it. I slept the other days. I didn't drink and I was fresh and I had a really good time. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting lame over my old age or something, but that actually worked out really well. And I think I'm going to do the same thing every year. Like maybe one night's the drinking night, but that's it, and the rest of the time, just enjoy the con and enjoy your friends and stuff. And you don't have to stay up all night.
Dan, I just realized something too. Ran into Aaron and Liz leaving the restaurant right next to the hotel we were at. Did you have fries at that place? The tavern or whatever, the one that was just right across the street from the Spring Hill Suites. It was connected to that pancake house place.
He must not have because he's not talking about that.
Oh, I thought you were asking Dan.
No, you.
I don't think I. I'm sorry.
It's all right. No worries. Because we were in the same.
This is when you find out you're like, why did we invite this guy on? Explain French fries.
Right.
I don't remember if I had French fries. I know maybe the first day we had fish and chips, so we must have had French fries the first day. But I didn't have like the day we saw you coming from there. No, I think we had other stuff. Why'd you get sick off them?
No, they were just some of the best fries I've ever eaten.
Oh, they were really good? Okay.
Yeah, they were fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah,
we haven't put the other episode out, so yeah, you don't hear us talking about these French fries for a half
raving about fries.
we usually go there once. We go there the night before with our friend Mark Maxey and usually his wife, and then like Ben comments. There's like maybe 6 or 8 of us that go there religiously every year. This year, Liz and I and Mark were the only ones who made it. Like Ben was on a plane, my buddy John was on a plane, Mark's wife couldn't make. It was just Matt Seshwish didn't come at all, so it was just us. But so usually we go there once per Adepticon. We went there I think 3 times this year, or maybe 4. I can't remember. It was just it's a good restaurant, and it's within walking distance from that hotel. So
Right.
do you
Yeah,
guys
it's really
usually
convenient.
stay at that hotel? Is that
100% of the time we stay there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
so
our
do
only
we.
year. Yeah.
So do we. Yeah, that's cool. All the cool kids stay at that hotel, man.
Exactly.
I love that place, and they serve food in the morning, so that's like really
Yes,
cool.
that's a bonus. That you might pay a couple extra bucks if that, and you have to walk or
It's
drive
cheaper
to the
than
hotel.
Schomburg.
But
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but you're getting freaking food in the morning. That's
Yeah.
10-20 bucks right there.
Yeah, the Uber is $5, $6, 12 if you're unlucky, but it's like $5 or $6 both ways. I'll do that all day long,
Yep.
And we walked it most of the time. We just walked. Yeah, we just
it is
huffed it
close
over.
enough to walk. So
Yeah.
I'm lazy, so I don't do stuff like that. But I get it.
Yeah.
Also, usually I'm carrying all my class supplies with me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a different context. That's a different context. Yeah, I totally. So did you enter any of the painting competitions this year at all, or do you just go there to teach and hang out?
So I really want to, and I really wanted to last year. And both years, the answer is the same: no, because this year I literally worked. So when we have morning flights, a lot of times we have to leave the house at like 3 a.m. We prefer flying in the morning because you get where you're going, and then you can not there late at night, right?
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, so I really dig that, and so but what ended up happening, I worked till we left. So about 3 a.m. I stopped painting, got my stuff, and we walked out the door.
Oh wow!
So, yeah, it was, and that was just work. Lots of box arts and stuff. It's been incredibly busy, and I'm not complaining, but I'm a little bit complaining because it doesn't allow time for stuff like, hey, let's do a contest entry, which is odd because one of my contest entries that I want to do for Games Day is a paid job, but it's also one where some of it I don't know how to do yet, so I'm learning in Blender, the 3D sculpting part,
Right.
And so it just, because things get so chopped up with normal work, it just hasn't happened yet. So, I'm hoping to do this really big, extravagant piece for Golden Demons. I just haven't been able to finish it or I haven't been able to learn how to finish it. So, I've got it pretty far along in the sculpting process. I just need to sculpt the figures, and that's the part I'm learning right now. So yeah, I had like this year I was hoping to have something for something, just anything. And from January 1st, I've been swamped. So, that's not a bad thing because I have friends that aren't, desperate for work, but,
Right.
But at the same time, it does kill you a little bit inside. It just burns your soul when you like, I love being part of that. I kind of get off on the, the adrenaline rush. Like, are they going to call my name? And then they don't, you're crushed, it's like, or they do and you're happy, it's like it's both emotions, but there's something about that. It just reminds you you're alive. I think, it's being part of that madness. And so I haven't been able to experience that the last couple of years. Especially after ReaperCon, but obviously I can't enter Voldemort in game, Golden.
Right.
That's the other thing. Since all the contests at Adepticon are manufacturer contests, you have to do a privateer piece, or you have to do a GW piece, or a creature caster, or whatever. And I know that people have been talking about bringing back a Crystal Brush type contest where it's just whatever. And that would be awesome. We've actually talked a little bit within Miniature Monthly that we might be part of something like that. So that would be super cool, but it hasn't happened. So
Right.
Obviously these things all take money and stuff, a lot of which, we're all artists, don't have. So, trying to figure out a good way to do something like that. But I mean, that would be really cool. I might have a better chance of actually entering a contest at that point. Just because I can paint. whatever's on my desk I could bring, you know.
Right.
Obviously I can't, like, I never asked Atomic Mass Studios if I could enter their worthy contest, but it is kind of weird if your box artist is entering your painting contest. Like even if you deserve the win, there's always going to be someone who's like, yeah, but that guy works for you, you know. Like, come on, it's like running your own painting contest and then winning it, you
Right.
know. Like it doesn't work that well, you know.
Yeah.
Like it's just so anyways, you know, it's yeah, so like I'm pretty much, all the contests are just like, if I can't come up with a piece that's just one of those companies, which right now I don't have too many commissions that are actually of, well, I have the one Games Workshop commission, but again, I'm still learning how to actually finish it.
Right.
So it is what it is. You know, I don't worry about it too much, but it would be super cool, you know, for sure.
Yeah, I
Next
totally
year.
see the fun of it. Yeah, you know, I did this is my first Golden Demon, and yeah, seeing your piece on the bottom shelf and not moving is kind of that was a kick. That was a
Yeah,
kick in the
it's a
balls.
bummer, yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, I
Sorry.
see, yeah, there we go.
I don't
Sound
think that's the
effects
sound it's
engaged,
supposed
yeah.
to make when you're getting kicked in the balls.
No, I don't think so. Totally
Okay.
inappropriate sound effect.
Well, I mean, maybe for some people, but
Oh.
oh,
But yeah, it's one of those things, and I've noticed a lot. Like this year, I had a bunch of friends that were pretty crushed over Golden Demons. But you know, I had that happen to me one year, and I lost about 6 months of my life to just being butthurt, and that was like really awful. And I was really mad at myself after about 6 months. I'm like, oh my gosh, really? I've had a ruin, like that contest ruined my half of a year. Like, and then I was over it. Like, I was just like, this is so stupid. So, but I do like the competitiveness of it. You just have to have your mind in the right place. And so, like for me, I'm very much like, okay, I'm going to kick and claw and scream and scratch and try my hardest to beat everyone that's coming up against me. But as soon as I turn the model in, then it's no longer a contest, and you know, you're on God's good humor at that point, because who knows what's going to happen, you know?
Right.
At the end of the day, you can look at it and be like, I have a cool model that I got to take home with me, you know? And if you look at it that way, then if you win, it's actually a surprise. You're like, holy crap, you know, like, that was really cool. And if you lose, you're like, well, you know, I wasn't, you know, it is what it is, you know? And that's the thing with contests, is it's so subjective. It just is what it is, you know. Yeah. The judge doesn't like green orcs that day, and you painted green orcs in every one of your entries. You know, like you know, they're like, those look cool, but I just don't like green orcs, so we're gonna pick these guys, and you know, sorry, you're out. But you know,
we're releasing Dark Angel soon, and we have the Dark Angel win the Slayers for it. No, and I'm just
yeah, wow, luckily Mike. It was a really good paint job.
It was a really good paint job. It was. Neil Hollis did an amazing job. I just wanted to be funny.
That didn't factor in though. So here's the thing: in painting contests, I think at the top, there's a lot of luck that's involved. Just period. So, did he know that, you know, they're releasing some Dark Angel stuff? Probably not.
Right.
He just painted that model. He just and he painted the crap out of that model. Like, that model was gorgeous.
It is.
So, boom. When I did Voldemort, you know, right before the contest, I posted on our little secret group, like, hey, this is what I'm bringing or whatever. And so then Eric Swenson's like, oh, here's war. That's what I'm bringing. I'm like, crap. You know, like I was kind of hoping everyone over COVID either wouldn't show up or, you know, it wasn't ready, you know, like I was banking on the fact that people wouldn't be prepared for me bringing Voldemort. And then I get a message from Steve Garcia, and he's like, hey, do you think I still have a chance to win Best in Show if I show up late on Saturday? And I'm like, probably not, because so ReaperCon is both fan vote and judge voting. So like you get a little bit of both, which is kind of nice because, you know, people like what they like, and it's not always what the judges like, you know? So, you know, in that one, I knew I was playing the game. I was like, you know, who's not going to like Harry Potter?
Right.
You know? And so it was like, and it was a full sculpt, and I made sure everyone knew it was a full sculpt. So I checked all the boxes, and then I painted it as best I could, and it's like, well,
You
after
nailed
that,
it.
you're just lucky, people either like it or they don't, and so, that being said, that Dark Angels winning the Slayer Sword, was probably the perfect storm because, they just released a gorgeous, what was it, the Lionel model or whatever. And then that guy paints a gorgeous Dark Angels commander, like it just is what it is,
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. And Stephen Garcia's Lionel, or Lion-O, sorry, not Lionel,
Yeah.
Lionel, Lion-O still took third place in Best in Show.
Yeah.
Right. Even which is coming Saturday.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think he showed up on Friday. He was like, I'm not,
Oh, did he?
I'm not leaving it that much to chance. But it's just one of those things that sometimes the contests are, you gotta game the system a little bit, and you also have to be lucky, and then also just don't leave anything to chance. Like when I knew that those guys were coming, I retextured that whole piece. I spent like 2 days just reskinning it with like adding more textures to the rock or to the staircase and all that stuff, and just working on, making sure my glow effects were as good as they could be, all that stuff. Like I went back and spent a lot more time on that one particular model because I was just like, I can't leave it to chance, So, and then I got lucky. I won.
I don't, it's some, yeah, I guess, but that it's a beautiful piece that you did. I mean, absolutely gorgeous. It's a well deserving of it. Even, that's one of the things that we talked about. Fan favorite Best in Show is a little tricky. Yeah, it's not like you said. The judges don't necessarily see it, and it's not. And this isn't even a cut to like others. It doesn't have to be the best painted. It has to be the best that relates to the audience.
It's got to talk to you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and and I guess you could also make an argument that if it talks to the people, it is the best painted. You know what I mean? Like if that's, and so that it's kind of, it's fun. It's another fun thing about ReaperCon that you get to see, and the people take it seriously too, man.
Yeah. Big time. But they're fans of miniature art. Like, I think that's the coolest thing ever. I think that's where like a lot of times artists get a little bit sidetracked because they start getting on too much on the technical aspect of things, and they forget about the human aspect of things. And that's a huge thing, when you're trying to get the masses to like something, like a lot of times, like perfect example, when I had a screen print company right out of high school, and I started doing work for this company called Stick World, and they basically just made stick figures, and they'd say like sassy over them, or brat. And but the way my buddy Billy drew these stick figures, it looked like a female being bratty, like how do you do that with a stick figure? Like, but he would. It was amazing. I didn't like the shirts at all. When he brought them in to my shop and was like, hey, we need somebody to print 500 shirts, I was like, yeah, this will be the last 500 shirts you do because these shirts are stupid, Then the order grew to 10,000. Before we even got the order, it was up to 10,000 shirts. And then we did 20,000 shirts a month for like the next 2 years. Like it was insane amount of stick figure shirts. Just goes to show you that like what you like in particular doesn't really matter. It's what the masses like, And so I think that's where a lot of artists have problems because they're like, that's technically not as good as this, but everyone likes that, like it is what it is, So I guess that's why we have Walmarts and stuff like.
Truth. Very true. If it wasn't for Walmart, I wouldn't have been able to eat at that first ReaperCon, that I went to a couple of years ago.
Exactly.
Buy stacks of ramen.
Yeah.
But
that's right. We were talking about being broke at cons.
Yep. Yeah, but when I got there, I got there on the Wednesday, and I'm the same way as you. I take like a 6 a.m. flight, and I'm at the hotel by 8 a.m. in Dallas. I'm like, all right, ready to go. Even the Reaper people were like, "What the hell are you doing here?" I'm like,
I don't know.
I got nothing else to do, But the first couple days, I didn't get paid until that Friday, And so
You're just squeaking
she's
by.
just squeaking, and and then it was funny because Eric and a couple of his friends were there too, but they were at the hotel. Literally, we were not at the resident or I can't remember what the name of the hotel is, but I was at one hotel, they were at the other, and they were almost connected on the other side of the street. And it was funny because I was out walking about, and then I ran into them outside. I'm like, how the hell do like the odds of me running into?
Random.
And so they're like, oh, we're gonna go to lunch over this place, and I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I already ate. I'm just gonna go hang with you.
Really, I'm starving.
But it's what you do to get for the hobby, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of which, here, like, I'm gonna do this now. Let's see if this works. All right. So I want to do, because one of the things that you and I were talking about at the hotel at Adepticon was kind of some hobby horror stories,
Right.
and I've told non-hobby, like 10 non-hobby people your story about the hurting yourself in the game store. So would you share that story with people?
So over the years, I've gotten pretty good at, using X-Acto knives and stuff. Like I'm pretty careful, but also I've noticed it seems like X-Acto knives aren't as sharp as they used to be. I think they maybe do that on purpose, like so people aren't cutting their fingers off. But I went to the hobby store. I needed an X-Acto knife. And so I went down to our local hobby store, which was like a couple miles or a mile away from the main game store in San Diego. And they had hobby knives. So I'm like, cool. So I pick one up. It was a cheapo $2 hobby knife, bring it back. And I very quickly realized this is like the sharpest knife I have ever encountered ever. It's sharper than my scalpels, everything. Because I was doing little bitty cuts and it was cutting right into my fingers. And so I'm like, okay, I got to be really careful with this knife. Well, I was painting one of the Flying Frog productions, one of the Shadows of Brimstone box arts, which was the female drifter. And I had put her together where her arms were both in front of her body, but apparently her one arm with her gun is supposed to be behind her. Like she was, she's shifty, you don't know that she's got her gun out type of thing because she's a drifter. So they had told me, could you change that? Because obviously it's wrong for the box art. So I had this really sharp knife and I think, hey, I'm just going to cut the arm off, Well, when sometimes super glue is very, like it just pops right off. Other times it is like concrete. Okay. So this was one of those concrete times. So I'm trying to cut through the arm. It was a clean, just a straight, there was no tab that went into the arm, nothing. It was just a clean, straight cut, or a straight connection between the two parts. But for whatever reason, I couldn't get it to cut. So I'm pushing harder and harder and harder. And then it gives way. And I saw the knife, I saw it go into my thumb. Like it's almost like it goes in slow motion at that point, I saw it go into my thumb and pop right back out. It happened really quick. And I'm like, my buddy Alan's sitting across the table from me. I just grab onto my thumb and I hold it together. So I'm like, okay, I know that was bad. And, speaking of not having insurance, I didn't have insurance at the time. So I'm like, I know that's bad. And I really don't want to have stitches right now. Like I was leaving for Gen Con in like 3 days. So I just held my thumb together. But it hurt like crazy. And I kept thinking, I'm like, how deep is this? So finally, one of the guys from the store comes over and he goes, well, here, let me look at it. So I get up, I got the nerve to take my hand off my thumb. I didn't want to look at it because if you're bleeding to death, I'm totally fine with that. I could party. I could do whatever I want. If I have a little bit of blood on me, I'm passed out. So I show this guy my thumb. He goes, it looks like it's a good cut, but it looks like your thumbnail stopped it. So you're good. So he got some gauze from the store and wrapped it up. Well, all the while he's wrapping it up, the adrenaline is just going through my system. And all of a sudden I start seeing cobwebs, like the world started to encroach on my head. And I'm like, I'm going to pass out. So it was kind of like slow motion. I kind of slump out of my chair and I lay down on the floor of the game store. Now, for those of you out there listening who've never been in a game store before, they're dirty. This game store was incredibly dirty over where I was. And I'm like laying in just filth on the floor, and I don't even care. It was just cold sweats coming out. Like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to pass out. I'm going to pass out. So I end up laying there for like half hour to 45 minutes, just laying on the floor of the store. And everyone who would come in, I'd hear them talking because I didn't even have the energy to open my eyes. Like, I thought I was dead. And so my friend's like, if you pass out, we're taking you to emergency. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's going to cost so much money. Like all these things are going through my head. So I would hear people walk in and they'd be talking. They're like, why is Aaron on the floor? Oh, he cut his finger. So a couple more people end up looking at my finger. They're like, okay, yeah, you're a big baby. Like one of the other guys who worked at the store comes in. He looks at my finger. He's like, I don't understand why you're on the floor, but whatever, it's not that bad of a cut. So I'm like, whatever it is, it just hurts. It stinking hurts so bad. So it was back when Liz and I were doing our long distance relationship. So I'm in San Diego, she's in Georgia. And so I messaged her. I'm like, hey, I cut myself pretty bad. She's like, well, par for the course, send me a picture when you get home. So I get home and I take the gauze off real carefully. I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, it's about 1/8 of an inch deep, whatever the measuring from the tip of the skin on my thumb to the thumbnail, it's that deep of a cut. I'm like, I don't get it. So I take a picture and I send her the picture. And then I'm like, well, I want to look at the picture, because morbid curiosity. I blow the picture up and I'm like, why is there a line across half my thumbnail? And then it hit me. That's where the knife stopped.
Oh.
Halfway through and it wasn't like the tip of my thumbnail. It was the middle of my thumbnail. Like in fact, I'm pretty sure I cut halfway through the bone. And that's why it hurt so bad.
Oh, ouch.
It all made sense. Then I felt like a super tough guy. I was like, oh, I almost cut my finger off, but I didn't care, That knife was so sharp and so clean that I never got stitches. It never it never how if you cut yourself really deep, the skin usually spreads apart, and that's why you need stitches. It didn't do any of that. It just stuck back together perfectly, like I hadn't done it. And then other than it being numb for a couple years, it's finally I have feeling in my thumb again, but it was numb for a couple years and then it was fine. But I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. So I thought I was I was pretty cool with that story. And then Will Hahn goes and cuts his finger off.
Right, with the what was it?
Making
The
a
router.
plinth, with the router.
With his router. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, he sent me the pictures of that, and that turned my stomach. I was like, whoa.
Yep.
So he wins, and I'm fine with that.
Right, me too.
You can win that contest all day long.
I heard he sent the pictures to Banshee, and Banshee cussed him out for sending it to him.
He goes, I figured. Well, he told me, I figure you could handle it, and it'd also be good reference material.
All right, there's just something wrong with him.
He's talking about getting out of surgery and stuff. So I'm sort of an idiot. I'm like, whoa, did you get a vasectomy? In that much pain. He's like, hold on. And then he sends me a picture and I'm like, oh God, he sent me a picture of it, and it's a hand on the table with a finger sitting next to it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, that would be a definitely reason for surgery, but hey, apparently he cut it off at the right spot and they just stuck it back together and look at him now, man. He's an even better painter. So.
Right.
Oh God.
Everybody, go cut your fingers off and you'll be a better painter.
Yeah. He told me when it happened, he looked down at himself and he was wearing not a dress shirt, but a button-up shirt. And he goes, there was just shards of bone all the way up his shirt, onto his face. Because a router doesn't cut your finger off. It grinds it off.
Oh.
It's not a thin cut.
It's just
his finger's 1/8 of an inch shorter now because that part is on his shirt. Which is even more incredible that they put it back on. He's got all his fingers, it's not just the tip of his fingers. But... Holy moly. Who is it? Swinson got on him. He's like, Will, you do know that's why you can just call somebody to make a plinth for you. You don't have to make your own.
Oh yeah. No, I don't. So I guess I'm taking it then you're part of is it the LXP?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
League
yeah.
of Extraordinary Painters.
Yep. Very cool. Very cool. Well, definitely deserved for sure, man. A lot of amazing painters in that group.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It was a lot more active there for a while, but I think everyone switched to Snapchat, and I'm like, well, I'm not following you guys to Snapchat. It's just I don't have it in me, man.
No. No. Yep. We're right there with you. We're limited in our social media applications too. We're like old. We are old. This is
Yeah.
enough for us, you know?
I had it earlier today. I had one person messaging me on Messenger, another person texting me, another person was on Instagram, and I think there was another conversation going on Discord, and I was so freaking confused. Kept telling this. I'm like, where did okay, Jordan just messaged me. I can't find it. What are you talking on? I'm talking on all of them. Like
Right.
It is what it is, but
right. It's like we need like a teenager to handle the social media side of the business.
For them, they're like, we don't have enough. Like, I need 3
Right.
more apps that devote all my time. But
right.
it is what it is.
My teenagers are yelling in the background that they would do it. You know?
Yeah. They're like, we're in.
Right. They're monetarily motivated for sure. Man, I don't even know where to go after that story. Like your story's bad enough, and we throw in Will's story.
Yeah.
What do that seems like the interview can only go downhill from here,
Yeah. I will tell you, bone sawing yourself is not a feeling you want to ever like. It's just creepy. Let's put it that way. Like,
I can't even imagine.
Like, I bone sawed my leg or my finger or something one time, and it was just like the weird ripping feeling as it's sawing into you, because it's just a nasty tooth saw. That I would rather get cut with a like an X-Acto knife. Let's put it that way.
When I was in I used to work in restaurants growing up, and I don't know if you've ever seen those industrial blades on like the aluminum foil and saran wraps that they have in restaurants. Somebody called my name while I was in the kitchen, and I wasn't paying attention, and I turned and I ran my elbow across basically, which is a saw blade.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I felt like this rumble feeling, but I was numb. And the person walked up to me and they're like, dude, why is there blood all over the floor? I looked, I'm like, oh my God. And then like all of it hit me, and I was on the floor of a restaurant.
Yeah. You made your own sliced roast beef sandwich,
Exactly.
Oh.
Oh man, I have too many horror stories from restaurants because I worked in them way too long. Sure. I also worked in an IHOP during Mother's Day, so the worst ever.
Yeah, the worst time to be working there.
Yeah, absolutely. So where to go from there? All right, so kind of we're a section that we've been starting to do lately too is what's on the desk. So we already know you got some bases in your future, but Aaron, what's kind of on your desk right now? What are your main projects, if you're allowed to talk about?
Yeah. Well, fortunately for you guys, I'm not doing box art today. So this month, actually, I've been trying to finish up a commission that I've been working on for the last couple of months of Sisters of Battle. I haven't, it's kind of, well, it's not funny, but I haven't painted an army since I left San Diego. And so you get out of practice, it is a lot harder than I remember, but this month we have just been really cranking on it, and it's starting to come together. So we have a big Sisters of Battle army. And then, so the funny thing is, all my like Marvel Crisis Protocol, Shadows of Brimstone, all those companies, even Dark Sword with their dragons, have just been keeping me super, super busy with box art. And since January, that's like, aside from doing Sisters in between things, that's all I've done. And I can't talk about any of that stuff because none of it's released. So at Adepticon, I'm like, okay, after this month, I should have the Sisters done. So I told Dallas and my contact there, Tony, like, hey, after or May, just load me up. Load me up in May and June, and then July is always set aside for Flying Frog. So like, we're good. And then, so they're like, okay, cool. So, so I'm waiting for this email of just a million things to do. And then unbeknownst to me, Flying Frog has some big stuff coming up, and they called me the other night, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna load you up." Like, you've got to be kidding me.
Be careful what you wish for, right?
Yes, exactly. So I'm just like, awesome. I'm pretty sure those two companies are trying to kill me. Like, there's a contest to see which one can put me down first, but again, I can't really complain because it does help feed the family. So, it's good. It's good. It's just like, wow.
The dragons, the Dark Sword dragons are gorgeous, by the way. Well done.
Dude, those dragons, okay, so those dragons are freaking awesome. Like, they go together so perfectly. It's like unbelievable. Like, they spend a lot of time making sure that they fit like perfectly. In fact, to the point where he sculpted it so like when you put it together, a lot of times they overlap each other and you can't see the gap at all. So I didn't have to fill gaps on a lot of those dragons. Like, there's certain areas where you got to. It just is what it is. But there was a lot of spots that's very cleverly done, and they fit together so good. Like, you could almost just fit them together and not glue them. I mean, obviously you want to glue them.
Glue them, right?
Did
you were they resin or metal?
They're resin.
They're resin. They're not metal. Okay.
Yeah.
Even better.
I hate metal dragons. They're just too heavy. But Andy Piper did like an unbelievable job. And when Jim contacted me about it, he's like, "Hey, I'm doing like a dozen or 10 dragons, for my 20th anniversary. Do you want to paint them?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he sends me a picture of one dragon. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, is it going to be one dragon painted 10 different ways? Cause that's going to be super, super lame." But that was not what they did. Every dragon has its own character, and like they all have different scales. They all have different kinds of wings. It's really amazing what he did. And Andy's like, I mean, supposedly he just learned how to make dragons, but he's doing a pretty good job at it. Like, if those are his first.
Yeah, and for our listeners, if you want to see some just absolutely stunning painted dragons, go to the Dark Sword Miniatures page, because Aaron's pieces were up there. I saw them originally when Jim had put them out on Facebook. I was like, God damn, I love the blue one. Yeah, the blue one's my favorite.
So I think there's still like a bunch coming, because he's releasing like 2 a month or something. And then he's been hinting at the fact that he might have 2 more to do later this year or something. He said something about that on his Facebook page too. So, but I haven't heard anything, so who knows? It is what it is. Right now, I'm just like, I'm good not painting a dragon for a few more months. I did all of those dragons in 2 months. Like I did 5 before ReaperCon and 5 when I got home. And
oh wow!
I was like, that was a lot of dragons. Like, dragons, I mean, they're not the biggest dragons ever. Like, they're more appropriately scaled for like a D&D game or something, but they're still a lot of real estate to cover, so they take time. But yeah.
No, I painted a dragon for a friend as a present for their beating chemo, and it took so long to paint.
Yeah. The hardest part is, like, on box arts, you can't really get away with, like, I would have dry brushed the crap out of those dragons and they would have looked great, but you can't do that for box art. So you really are like, okay, well, here we go. Highlight all the scales by hand, But I did enjoy doing those. Jim kind of went and he's like, make them look like a Lovejoy paint job, lots of colors and everything. Which usually means don't do that, So I was kind of scared, but I did like the first couple of them, and I showed him pictures, and he's like, "Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, even more colors, great, So it was kind of fun, like, like that green dragon. I have a lot of oranges like in it, and I probably would have never done that if I hadn't painted the Incredible Hulk with a lot of orange in it. That was kind of a test model, or it was my model, so it didn't really matter. You can always play with your own models more so than a customer's models. But I never would have thought green and orange would have looked good together, but they do. So.
Well, and I apologize. It's the white dragon, but I thought it was a blue dragon when I saw it on Facebook.
I did paint a blue dragon, so
yeah.
Like, did they release that? I don't remember. But...
No. And that you did with it's beautiful whites, blues, and purples.
Yeah,
lots of purples.
Yeah,
in
like that's the most colorful white dragon you'll ever see. And Yeah, that one was a lot of fun. That was one of my favorites when it was done because you never know. It's like, wow, that's a lot of white. Like it's all white. But in the end, it was pretty cool. So
That makes me think of the conversation, Dan, we had about doing a Moon Knight figure. Right, like how do you do a Moon Knight? Like Moon Knight's just white. Or there's a awesome Mr. Knight bust I saw, but I'm like, wow, that's like white and gray. Like how do you really sell that in a context of a bust, right? For sure. But okay, so the more Dark Sword dragons are coming, which is awesome because those actually look really, really nice. I wish Jim would have a vendor booth at ReaperCon. He'd probably sell out of everything there.
yeah, he probably would. I think he's just happy with his web sales, quite honestly. Like, this works good. He's getting residual checks from A Song of Ice and Fire, so he's like, hey, things are cool. And I think also when he goes to these cons now, he just likes to hang out at the con. So I have it under good authority that he will be there next year at ReaperCon. So that should be cool because it's
nice.
An adventure. Him and I got into a lot of trouble every year at ReaperCon. I blame Jim. He's definitely the instigator of it all. But yeah.
Nice. I have yet to meet him, so he hasn't been at the two that I've been at.
Yeah. He didn't go to those ones, but supposedly he told me definitely going to this year. So.
And that'll do it for part 1 of our interview with Aaron Lovejoy for Miniature Monthly. Thank you so much, Aaron, for joining us. It was a fascinating yet bloody conversation. Really enjoyed it and look forward to putting out part 2. You can follow Aaron at Miniature Monthly on Facebook or on Instagram, as well as the Art of Lovejoy on Instagram. So thank you again so much for your time and telling us and sharing your hobby journey with us. We'd also like to take a moment to thank our patrons. So Lee, Andrew, Michael, Colin, Carolyn, Cannibal Noises, Dan, Raggy Paints, or Raggedy Pants, Christopher, and Nick. Thank you all so much for being a part of our Patreon. I know a couple of you have dropped off, but we still appreciate the support that you have given us. It'll make it so much easier down the road for us to do sponsorships, different painting competitions. Again, thank you so much for your time. You can like, subscribe, or follow wherever you get your podcasts. And if you could leave us a good review, we would greatly appreciate it. And also spread the word about the podcast. That is also an amazing thing you could do. Our listeners, who are just absolutely the best that anybody could ask for. You could also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Listening to Paint Dry, as well as send us an email at listeningtopaintdry@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Part 2 of this will be out Friday, May 12th. And again, thank you so much to Aaron Lovejoy for joining us. And no matter how much damage you do to yourself, remember, it's all in the name of becoming a better, braver, happier painter. Until next time. But for the love of God, be careful out there. Tools can hurt you. Listening to Paint Dry with Mike and Dan is a production of LTPTWMD. All rights reserved. No portion of this recording may be used without the express written consent of the host. The music is Death by a Thousand Questions by Springtide. Download from the Free Music Archive on a non-commercial attribution share-alike basis. All views and opinions expressed in the show are solely the views and opinions of the person who said them. All celebrity voices, if any, were impersonated and done so poorly.